Sunday night box office, The Postman Always Rings Twice, was co-sponsored by Polaroid Instant Photography System, Citizen Watch, Shiseido Facial Skincare Products, Hermes, and Longines of Switzerland. Tomorrow in Studio 930.
Marry me? Again?
I feel really terrible about doing this to your marriage.
But the die is cast now. There's no going back.
Dallas, the 90-minute conclusion. Tomorrow in Studio 930 on Pearl.
Good evening, Nick Griffin with News Roundup. In South Africa, the leader of a new giant trade union federation today urged foreign investors to pull out of South Africa. Elijah Barayi was speaking after being elected president at the formal launching of the new trade union federation. The group numbers almost 500,000 black workers, and they're demanding constitutional change. Jim Hickey reports.
Not yet fully organized, it is already the largest labor federation in South Africa's history. 900 delegates representing 500,000 workers from 36 labor groups. The newly created Congress of South African Trade Unions is mapping out strategy this weekend to challenge white political dominance with black industrial muscle.
Never before have workers been so powerful, and never before have workers been so united.
But it has taken 4 years of talks to even get this far. Kusatu represents a variety of political, tribal, and language differences. Labor experts, however, say if the new federation can solve its ideological problems, it may present a tough challenge to the South African government. Black workers were allowed by the government to form unions only 6 years ago. Among the most vocal have been mine workers. Although legalized, strikes have been dealt with harshly, and in the beginning, black unions avoided politics. But as the rank and file demanded a more militant stand against apartheid, union leaders looked for ways to unite literally hundreds of labor factions. The result is this federation, which sees as its mandate the formation of a political as well as labor alliance. Jim Hickey, ABC News, Johannesburg.
Egypt is continuing to beef up its military strength along the border with Libya. Egyptian Prime Minister Ali Lotfi says his government will do its utmost to prove Libyan involvement in the recent hijacking of an Egyptian airliner. Meanwhile, the bodies of 33 victims of the hijacking were returned to Egypt. We have more details from ABC's Hal Walker.
Some of those who were aboard the ill-fated Egyptair 648 finally reached their destination, Cairo. For these 12 lucky ones, it was a day of reunion with family and friends, the end of an ordeal. But the occasion was low-key. No welcoming ceremonies, no official greetings, nothing but private moments that some of the former hijack hostages surely thought would never come. Political opponents of President Hosni Mubarak are demanding a complete investigation of the hijacking. But the surviving co-pilot supported the storming of the plane.
I mean, the hijacker has to be surprised like this, because if they felt anything, they would explode every bomb they have, because they had no intention to surrender.
The unlucky ones came to Cairo aboard another special flight, the bodies of 33 who died in Malta. Some will be flown on to the Philippines and to Australia for burial. Egyptian victims were turned over to relatives here for the mournful funeral rites, as were 3 of the 8 Palestinian children trapped in the deadly conclusion of the hijack drama. And those who may have felt closest to the event, co-workers of 2 Egyptair flight attendants who died, gathered for prayers of condolence at a mosque near the airport.
A Washington newspaper reported today that 2 senior U.S. Army officers traveled with the Egyptian commandos who stormed the hijacked plane in Malta last weekend. According to the report, the arrival of the officers triggered off a dispute between the Maltese and U.S. authorities. The report says the dispute possibly prevented U.S. anti-terrorist experts from arriving in Malta in time. This week marks the first anniversary of the Bhopal gas disaster, which claimed the lives of almost 2,000 people and injured scores of others. But in the wake of the initial tragedy, the question of compensation now commands the most attention, as we hear in this report from Vince Sherry.
1 year after these pictures played to shocked millions around the world, it's not the loss of life that's foremost on the minds of Bhopal residents. Instead, it's the long and uncertain process of getting compensation that most concerns people now. The Union Carbide Corporation, whose subsidiary company owns the plant where the leak occurred, has all but disclaimed responsibility, saying repeatedly that the disaster was the result of sabotage and that the corporation is guilty in name alone. Carbide is now doing all it can to get the scores of lawsuits filed against them in the U.S. transferred to India, as Indian courts are reportedly slower and less generous than their American counterparts. Carbide had attempted to skip the courts altogether by offering a $200 million out-of-court settlement to the Indian government, but the offer was rejected because it was too low. For now, it appears the issue of compensation will be decided in the courts. It's only a matter of where. Lawyers representing both sides must wait until January 3rd, when a U.S. district court will decide if compensation claims should be tried in the U.S. or in India. For News Roundup, in Sherry, TVB News.
In the Philippines, the verdict in the Benigno Aquino murder trial will be delivered tomorrow. 2 Manila television stations will broadcast the proceedings live as the Marcos government takes steps to publicize the verdict. And in the Soviet Union, the wife of leading dissident Andrei Sakharov is due to leave for the West tomorrow for medical treatment. Sakharov has reportedly staged 3 hunger strikes in the last 2 years to press for permission for his wife to go to the West and seek treatment. In Hong Kong, substandard flats that had to be evacuated at the Kwai Fong and Kwai Hing estates are now a potential breeding ground for crime. As Carmen Look reports, residents there complained today that the number of burglary cases has risen sharply in the last week.
Angry and worried residents turned up at a mass rally this morning, signing up to urge for increased security measures. They want the housing authority staff and police to patrol empty units more often. According to their representatives, more than 20 reports of burglary and robbery have been received in the past few days. While confirming that more crimes were reported, housing officials don't regard the situation as serious. Nevertheless, they promise to step up manpower in policing and to seal off empty blocks. 7 buildings in Kwai Hing and Kwai Fong estates were declared unsound. 3,500 families have to make way for redevelopment. Tenants of 3 blocks are to move out first, and it is in these blocks that the problem lies. Meanwhile, a pressure group called for an open hearing on the safety problem of 26 public housing blocks. Meeting Point spokesman said it's against the spirit of a representative government to cover up information of such notorious faults. The group feels that the public has the right to know why building materials of 26 blocks could turn out to be substandard and who should be held responsible. For News Roundup, Carmen Loke, TVB News.
The government's policy of allotting building contracts to the lowest bidders may be partially responsible for recent defective public housing blocks. That's the view of one of Hong Kong's pressure groups, as Daisy Jung reports.
Director of the Society for Community Organization Fong Ho Lap said in an open forum today that the bidding system to allot building contracts might have led to the use of poor quality materials. As the lowest bidder got the contract, the use of inexpensive materials was one way to lower the cost. Also, Fong thinks the penalty for contractors who violate the law is too low, the maximum fine being $250,000 and 3 years imprisonment. He thinks the Legislative Council should set up an independent body to control the structure of public housing estates. However, the chief structural engineer of the Housing Department, David Lee, said housing authority members are already well qualified to bear the responsibility. For News Roundup, Daisy Jung, TVB News.
Former shareholders of the Overseas Trust Bank have asked the Financial Secretary, Sir John Bremridge, to form a tribunal to process their compensation claims. They say they won't accept previous rulings which gave them no compensation, and that they will continue to pressure the government to recoup their losses. The group will petition UMELCO and the Financial Secretary for assistance later next month. Prepaid toll tickets may soon be available for use at the Lion Rock Tunnel. The Transport Department is considering private sector participation as a way to help implement the plan.
At the moment, only the privately managed Cross Harbour Tunnel uses prepaid toll tickets. However, Commissioner for Transport, Peter Leeds, says his department is now studying a scheme to recruit a private company to print and issue prepaid tickets for the Lion Rock Tunnel. It's expected that the company will make money from advertising revenues.
Lead says the plan will be announced in the next couple of weeks and can be implemented soon after that because there are no legal obstacles involved.
We can go ahead straight away with existing legislation to bring that into effect.
The Transport Department action is prompted by a Taipo District Board survey which showed that each toll booth at the Line Rock Tunnel was processing 70 fewer cars each hour after the toll was raised to $3 in April. The prepaid ticket scheme will be the second time that the Transport Department has involved private companies in its plans. The first was the private garage vehicle inspection scheme.
Overseas again, and the recent wave of espionage cases in the United States has prompted President Reagan to comment on the issue in his weekly radio address. The president reaffirmed his administration's determination to root out spies of any nation threatening the U.S. national security. Here's part of President Reagan's speech.
The administration has given high priority to improving our ability to detect and counter any hostile intelligence threat. We've added resources, people, and top-level attention to this task. We will not hesitate to root out and prosecute the spies of any nation. We let the chips fall where they may. The arrest we're seeing now should alert us to the danger we face. Even skeptics should recognize how necessary it is to maintain our top-quality counterintelligence efforts. At the same time, we can learn through each espionage case how to prevent these spies and turncoats from hurting us. In 1981, we began a comprehensive review of counterintelligence, security, and countermeasures. While much has been done, culminating in additional arrests, there is more we can and must do. We're currently seeking a broad range of reforms and improvements, including reducing the size of the hostile intelligence threat within our borders, better monitoring of exchange programs, improving government communications and personnel procedures, better analysis, expanding counterintelligence capabilities abroad, and ensuring the security of U.S. embassies and bases throughout the world. We are working closely with the Congress in addressing many of these needs.
Iranian leader Ayatollah Khomeini has made his first public appearance in recent weeks, as we hear in this report from WTN.
The occasion was the anniversary of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. For it, the Ayatollah Khomeini made one of his rare public appearances. And if the response of the faithful is anything to go by, Khomeini's Islamic revolution still has plenty of light in it. For Iran's believers, and there are millions of them, Khomeini is the voice of God. But part of their fervor is also probably attributable to growing fears about Khomeini's health. His chief unfinished business is the war with Iraq. He wants a complete victory before he dies. As do these Iraqi prisoners of war, says Tehran. A new Iranian offensive seems to be in the making. These POWs may be part of that offensive, turning their guns against their countrymen and their homeland. Iraq will probably be able to beat off the offensive as it has the 6 previous ones. And these Iraqi troops won't make much difference one way or the other, like so many other young men on both sides before them, simply part of the war's harvest of death.
Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi has completed his 4-day state visit to Japan. Gandhi is hoping to get more financial and technological cooperation as a result of the visit. We get more from Richard Vaughan.
It was the main ceremonial occasion during the 4-day state tour. The Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and his wife were paying a formal visit to the most prestigious address in the land of the rising sun, the palace of Emperor Hirohito. They'd been invited for lunch. But true to protocol on such occasions, before they could eat, there were photographs to be taken. And because there's no place for interpreters in state photographs, their host was rendered speechless while the session lasted. The Gandhis, at least, had each other to talk to. The Japanese are famed for their gardens, but the Indian guests had no time to look over the grounds because the gong had sounded, metaphorically speaking. Lunch was on the table. Again, protocol seemed to take precedence over communication as everyone filed in. The emperor, being at home, was first to take his seat. With the ceremony over for a while, the two sides could break bread together and get down to the serious purpose of the visit. India hopes for, and has already been promised, increased Japanese financial and technological aid. As the Indian Prime Minister told his Japanese counterpart, he had seen for himself how Japan had modernized without losing her traditions. Now India must learn to do the same.
And finally, the weather. It'll be fine apart from some cloudy periods overnight. Winds will be moderate north to northeasterly. Tonight's minimum temperature will be a chilly 17 degrees, rising to a slightly warmer 23 degrees later tomorrow. And that's it from the news and for today. So from all of us here at TVB, have a very good night.
It's time for the intrigues of the paper dolls next. But first, Deborah joins us with today's posting deadlines.
Hello. Just before we carry on with the viewing here on the Pearl, I'd like to remind you about some final airmail posting deadlines for letters and cards to arrive in time for Christmas. Tomorrow is the final day for Sabah, Chile, Jamaica and Lesotho. Tuesday, December the 3rd for Papua New Guinea, Uganda and Burma. And Wednesday, December the 4th for New Zealand, India and Peru. So don't forget to post early and join me again tomorrow for more posting deadlines. See you soon.
Tomorrow at 7:30, it's Hong-Kong Now, followed at 8 by Solid Gold. At 8:30, it's the first of our December musical specials, Laura Branigan in concert. Studio 930 brings you the tragic conclusion to the present series of Dallas. Tomorrow, it's on Pearl. The Royal Observatory's public weather services will go fully metric on January the 1st, 1986. The new units to be introduced are kilometre for distance, kilometre per hour for speed, and hectopascal for atmospheric pressure. If you wish to know more about the changeover, get an information leaflet from the Royal Observatory or your nearest district office. Join the Pearl for Tuesday Sport, featuring the Hong Kong International Kart Grand Prix, the World Gymnastics Championships, St. Ivel Ice Dance Championship, and Big League Soccer. Tuesday Sport, it's on Pearl. We are the Pearl.